day in Alabama.
Vickery says he supports the work of the Special Legislative Committee looking into so-called university slush funds. It's Vickery's opinion that education is inefficient, but not nearly so inefficient as most of state government.
Is state government itself better managed than most of the public colleges and universities of Alabama? How about our welfare system, or the state Medicaid system, or our transportation system? How about our penal institutions? Personally, I'd stack up almost any of our colleges and universities against any of our other complex social institutions with similar service missions.
Vickery advises against a state board of regents to control all of higher education. He says such a system encourages over-control and unionization of teachers. Vickery worked for the Florida Board of Regents for 7 years. One of the 3 suggestions Vickery has to help higher education is for the Alabama Commission on Higher Education to retain its new authority to coordinate program and budget requests of the state's colleges and universities. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Most of the damage was near the downtown area. The tornado hit the Chamber of Commerce building and moved northeast. It tore the awning off this loan company and uprooted several trees. This house was vacant. But residents of the Oaklawn Inn had to be relocated after a tree crashed into their boarding house. Injuries were minor, only 3 in Sylacauga, and the Talladega County Sheriff's Department reports 15 persons injured county-wide. Melvin Culver was inside when he heard the tornado strike at about 10 o'clock.
Well, I heard something sound like a freight train coming. Wind was blowing hard. I heard something hit, and I jumped up and run to the door, and that tree had fell.
Power company workers spent the night restoring electricity to residents. This morning, city and county workers began picking up tree limbs and other debris. That project will probably take a week. Sylacauga residents say they feel fortunate the tornado didn't cause more damages and injuries. One of the reasons for the few injuries is that these businesses were closed when the tornado touched down. And a civil defense worker says the height of the tornado kept it from hitting other areas of the city. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Sylacauga.
Coach, what does Vero Beach have that Montgomery doesn't have to offer?
Well, one thing, it doesn't have the good athletes we've got up here, and I think it's going to present a great challenge for us. There's nothing about Montgomery that we don't love. This is our home and has been for some 40 years. I think it's the toughest decision I ever had to make in my life. Really, I look back at it, and it's the only decision I've ever had to make. It's kind of a situation where I'm at middle-aged, and we're hoping to take that job and make it my mistress and do some things there that maybe I'd like to have done differently here. I'd like to think that I've got more future than just the sand and mosquitoes of Florida. I'm a non-swimmer, I don't like the beaches, and I don't eat oranges. So I must be going down for, I guess, just the challenge of seeing if we can really prove ourselves one more time.
James Gaskell, chairman and president of First Alabama Bank of Montgomery, says credit restraints advocated by President Jimmy Carter are designed to help moderate inflationary trends. Gaskell says further growth in the unsecured consumer credit areas, such as the overuse of Visa, MasterCharge, and First Alabama credit line charge cards, must be restrained.
The reason we picked the credit card is because, in our case, and I think this is generally true in most banks, we've continued to have a substantial growth in the credit card outstandings where we haven't had that much growth in other type consumer lending.
Gaskell says there must be restrictions on non-essential borrowing, such as for vacations and investment speculating. But he says loans to buy appliances, automobiles, and to make home repairs are not restricted and are not considered inflationary borrowing. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Take part in your community. The Southeast Alabama Health Systems Agency is currently assessing the health needs of each county in Southeast Alabama.
Television commercials like this are already telling the public a questionnaire will be run in the Sunday editions of the Montgomery Advertiser-Journal, the Opelika-Auburn News, and the Dothan Eagle newspapers. The Southeast Alabama Health Systems Agency is paying for the ad. Questions in the survey are aimed at assessing the health needs of each county in Southeast Alabama.
The television spots urge citizens to complete the newspaper form and mail it back to the Health Systems Agency. Results of the survey will enable the agency to determine where those medical dollars could be better spent in each county. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
As of June 1st, Ocean Airways plans to offer 3 to 5 daily flights between Montgomery and Atlanta, Georgia. During a telephone interview with me this morning, Ocean's chairman, Charles Robertson, confirmed his company's intentions to move into Montgomery once Eastern makes its last flight from Danley Field. Robertson says Ocean will offer non-stop service to Atlanta and one-stop service to St. Simons Island, Georgia. He says flight times and ticket prices are scheduled to be worked out within the next 2 weeks. Ocean Airways flies propeller-driven planes, Martin 404s and Convairs. Robertson says his company will fly the 50-passenger Convair to and from Montgomery, and also they're trying to secure terminal space at Danley. Robertson admits there's still only one problem area to be overcome. That's the availability of fuel for his company's planes. But he says right now he's optimistic that a fuel allocation for Ocean Airways can be worked out at Danley. The news conference is scheduled for Monday afternoon at Mayor Emery Falmer's office, reportedly to announce Ocean's plans. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News, Danley Field.
I think that
Over 150 Exchange Club members heard Governor James address Alabama's Medicaid crisis. He says Medicaid's concept of helping people who can't help themselves is good. The governor favors additional funding of Medicaid, but says the program must be stabilized first, so a money crisis won't keep occurring. And he's all for changing federal regulations to allow families to help pay part of nursing home costs. James told the crowd he's never advocated earmarking a gas tax, even though Alabama's highways need the money. The governor feels the Alabama people are hurting no one but themselves by not placing a tariff on gas. James says weaknesses in the economy as well as inflation have put Alabama and the nation in a debt-infested hole. But conservative spending by the government and the consumers, the governor says, will help solve those problems. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Payments were $90-odd a month. It was a decent home. I think it cost $16,000. Or maybe they're going to wait, and I expect it will, until the next century to think about retiring this.
Stewart says no politician could pass up an opportunity to such a large gathering, so Alabama's senator told the crowd he may be running for the same Senate seat in the upcoming election. Stewart didn't say he would be a candidate, just that he might be, and that he would appreciate the group's support. Earlier, Stewart addressed the group on a controversial issue, federal funding cuts to nutritional programs, including school lunches and the Women, Infants, and Children's program. However, he could not say where cuts will be made and how severe they might be.
There will be some cuts in these programs, or perhaps programs will be left at last year's funding levels in some instances, which would work out as a cut. But we're trying to preserve as much of the nutritional programs as we can, because it means that folks, both in the middle income and lower income area, eat better. That means less health problems, and the nutrition research area, I was asked a question about that. We're trying to hold that if we possibly can, because it just makes good sense.
The group spent the day holding 3 separate meetings for its members: the Alabama School Food Service Association, the Alabama Dietitians Association, and the Hospital Institution Educational Food Service Society, all concerned with improving the quality of food and nutrition throughout Alabama. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
March 21st, 1965, 15 years ago today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the 36-year-old founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, leads 4,000 civil rights demonstrators in a march from Selma to Montgomery. With Andy Young by his side, King and the thousands of marchers were undertaking the 50-mile trek to demand passage of the Voting Rights Bill. In 1965, there were no registered black voters in Selma, despite the fact blacks outnumbered whites. King spoke on the importance of the bill just a few days before the march.
I think there is a need now for new legislation, a constitutional amendment to grapple with the real problems that we face in this area, in Alabama and Mississippi and other areas of the South. On the basis of this, I'm seriously considering going to Washington to talk to President Johnson about this whole matter.
After reaching Montgomery, their ranks would swell to 50,000. There would be no violence during the march that ended on Wednesday, March 24th. But on Thursday, March 25th, Detroit civil rights worker Viola Liuzzo was murdered in her car while driving some marchers back to Selma. Criminal charges are still pending in connection with her death. The Voting Rights Bill was signed into law on August 6, 1965. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
This past week, the Norris family and their friends have had to use a boat to get to their home. The dirt road that stretched across this field is underwater. Rising waters from the Alabama River are not only threatening agricultural land, but also could pose a serious problem for area homeowners. Charles Norris and his family have been filling sandbags for 2 weeks. Protecting their property is not cheap. Norris estimates he's used 12 truckloads of sand at $15 a load. The Army Corps of Engineers provides the burlap bags for free. The Norrises live in the Yellow Bluff community of Wilcox County, next to the Alabama River and downstream from the Miller's Ferry lower. Flood stage is 66 feet. The water is already approaching 75 feet. Last year, high flood waters eroded part of the bank under the Norrises' house. The family is hoping the waters won't cause any more damage.
River gets up every year, but not this high normally.
What are you going to do about it?
I'm going to sandbag. That's all I can do if it gets too high hit for the hill.
How high has it ever been?
It got up to about 80, 81 feet on Miller's Ferry lower gate. Last year was about 3 feet from the floor of our trailer here. But that's the highest it's been since I've been here. Now, it got higher than that in 1961. That's before my time.
Charles Norris is a bridge tender for the Frisco Railroad. His job of watching the bridge over the Alabama keeps him aware of the rising waters. The last thing Alabama needs is rain, but more is predicted, and at this point, there's no way to tell what effect, if any, more rain will have on future river levels. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News in Wilcox County.
Sponsored by WHHY Radio and McDonald's, Zoo Weekend included various arts and crafts shows, a pony ride, and of course, the animals.
I like watching the chimpanzees because they can climb real good and they swing on the poles. I like the lions and the birds. I like the lions and the tigers. I came to see the monkeys.
In the past, monies from the project have bought kangaroos and several bears. This year, the money will go in the zoo fund for upcoming zoo projects, especially since the zoo will be adding 15 more acres to its present facility. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery Zoo.
Who have had a part in this event. We have some legislators that need to be at committee meeting. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate the opportunity of allowing us to tell you how this came about and why.
An address on there. I noticed these don't have addresses, and we won't be able to answer them, even if we had the.
That our PTAs in Limestone County are active, and they have pleasure and responsibility to speak briefly on behalf of our citizens and to deliver these letters to you, our legislative delegation.
Welcome on board, my friend. Thank you, Derek.
Bill Ingram was introduced today as the new director of Alabama State Park System. With him, he brings a new goal to make the park system totally self-sufficient within 2 years. This year, the park system is getting $4 million from the General State Fund. In 1981, it plans to request $2.8 million. There are two key elements in reaching this goal: increasing the public's awareness of the parks and making access and reservation to the parks easier. To achieve the former, a strong promotional campaign will begin soon. And to achieve the latter, a new free reservation system with a toll-free number goes into effect April 15th. Ingram says they are hoping to have a 10% increase in the number of visitors to the parks this year. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Sources say Arthur Ayler was shot in the back while running away from Assistant Commissioner Joe S. Hopper Saturday, March 15th. Corrections and other law enforcement sources told me that they feel it wasn't necessary for Ayler to die that night. Corrections officials are tight-lipped about the Ayler killing and refuse to confirm documents I have showing Hopper as the official who shot Arthur Ayler. They say comments will come after a grand jury investigation. A state prison apprehension report shows the date of the incident and the circumstances. On the circumstances, it reads, inmate was located on Old Wetumpka Road by Deputy Commissioner Hopper. After being ordered several times to surrender, subject ran from Mr. Hopper and was shot. The incident report says at approximately 11:55 p.m., Deputy Commissioner Hopper radioed and requested an ambulance on the Old Wetumpka Road, stating that the escapee had been shot by him. That report was signed by Lieutenant Max Thornell, and Red Eagle Prison Camp Warden Tom Potts signed as the receiver of the report. State law says all law enforcement officers must have training to carry and use a weapon. All prison guards must have that training. Corrections Board spokesman John Hale says Hopper is well trained and legally qualified by his experience of 18 years in prison and to carry and use a weapon. Today, Minimum Standards official James Jackson told me that Deputy Commissioner Hopper is exempt from the training because of his position. Other exemptions include cabinet members and other appointed positions. The family of Arthur Ayler is known to be considering legal action in the matter, and a coroner's inquest has been mentioned, as well as a county grand jury investigation into what happened the night Arthur Ayler was shot and killed. Some law enforcement sources and corrections workers say they feel it wasn't necessary to shoot and kill a man who was serving time at a minimum security prison camp for nonviolent crime. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Like I told you, I don't judge a person by their motives. I judge them by their actions. And your actions last Friday night were reprehensible. Teenagers drinking. I'm well aware of what all went on down on your promotions down on Maryland Road. I keep up with things real good, and I know what was said down there, and particularly said about me. I know how much grass was smoked down there, and how much whiskey and tequila and vodka was drunk down there, and how much General King was raised down there. So don't talk to me about the way you handle your promotions.
Well, that was in the beginning where you just started off.
You don't deny a thing I just said, do you?
No, sir, I do not deny.
Okay. Know what went on down there.
4 against 1791. Number 5, 1012 against 1031.
Yes, sir. Now, I didn't have a first grade boyfriend by name Randolph.
All right. You skipped the R.
Just Houston.
You skipped that 0. Number 2, 7357, 8298. Number 4, 3691, 12077. Number 5, 5700, 604. Number 2, 1409 against 681. Number 4, Big part. Number 9. 5-9. Number 8. 6-4 against 1791. Number 5. 1012 against 1.
Henry Ford's invention ended man's dependence on the horse as a means of getting somewhere, but by no means is our four-legged friend out of favor. On any weekend, you can probably find a dozen horse shows within driving distance. A closer look will reveal some really outstanding horses, such as Jake McCoy and his rider-owner, Julie Markham. Last year, Jake, a quarter horse, and Julie, a student in pre-vet at Auburn, led the entire nation in the trail horse event. That is, they compiled more points in the amateur category of trail horse competition under the rules of the American Quarter Horse Association. This is an obstacle a horse might encounter on a trail ride going through a gate, huh?
Yes. You want a horse to very easily, very calm and quietly walk to a gate.
You're making noise with a chain and everything, all those things.
Well, you know, it just depends on the metal gates or wooden gates, but just easily come to the gate, open the gate,
and back,
shut it, and side pass up to the gate, and then just be able to maneuver himself into any position that you have to get into.
He did that pretty good, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay, what now?
He's crossing some logs. The object of the logs is to cross the logs, pick your feet up, and just cross obstacles without stumbling and falling. She's now backing through one of the call a W back, where you back through one side of the front 3, back through the back 2, then turn the horse around, then back through the back 2, and out the other side of the front 3 without knocking over, touching, or...
That is amazing. People don't understand how difficult it is to teach a horse to back.
It's very difficult. You want to try it?
No, I certainly don't. And to back like that is really phenomenal. Now, the horse is supposed to stand still while Julia walks away.
Right. This is what you call a ground tie, where the horses, you know, they're not supposed to eat and graze. A lot of the shows will have a bale of hay or a bucket of feed or a bucket of water sitting right there.
To entice them, huh?
Right. You know, it's kind of like getting your dog broke to heel for you, and then you go off, or having your dog broke that nobody can feed him but you.
Julia, Jake worked pretty well to be up in the barn this long, didn't he?
Yes, sir, he did.
How about yourself? You haven't been riding much going to school, eh?
No, I haven't. I've been on a horse, I think, once in the last month, unfortunately. I miss it.
You plan to show as much this summer as you did last year?
Well, I'm working for a vet this summer, hoping I can get into vet school, but I want to. I want to if I have time.
They are reviewing the emergency plans which would take place in the event of some type of nuclear emergency. They will be talking with our officials and going over the plan. They'll be talking with state, local officials like Civil Defense, State Health, Sheriff's Department, and they'll also have a meeting where the public can also discuss the plan and their comments about the plan.
The House Ways and Means Committee put the proposed $1.36 billion education budget in line for a vote by the full House next week. Elementary and secondary education receives nearly $700 million. Colleges and universities get a 13% increase in money. And teachers receive a 7% cost of living increase. The budget also has a $9 million cushion. Appearing before the House Constitution and Elections Committee, former Attorney General Bill Baxley says he likes a new proposed Campaign Disclosure Act because of its good intent. But he says he's only 80% convinced in the proposed changes. Baxley says the current Corrupt Practices Act on political campaign funding is totally ridiculous and unenforceable. He says he doesn't favor limits on contributions as long as the amount is made public.
Corporations ought to be able to contribute as long as they have to disclose and the public can see where the money's coming from.
The committee agrees that the campaign financing law needs to be reformed, and a subcommittee will draft a substitute for the measure. Reporting from the state capitol, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Military officials on the scene say 2 Mississippi Air National Guard jets were on a training flight when one suddenly crashed in a densely wooded area about a half-mile from Highway 14 near Sprott. Severed tree trunks and limbs marked the jet's path as it crashed into the ground. The plane apparently exploded on impact. Only this part of the tail section was intact. The rest of the jet was in bits and pieces scattered over a 500-square-foot area. The smell of jet fuel filled the air around the crash site. Though some of the wreckage did burn, a drizzling rain doused any fire. Both bodies, still in their ejection seats, were found about 500 feet apart. It's not known if the victims attempted to eject from the aircraft before it went down. An Air National Guard spokesman has identified one of the victims as Captain James Wells of Meridian. The other victim's name has not yet been released, pending notification of relatives. Military security and state troopers will remain at the crash site until cleanup operations are complete. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News, reporting from Perry County.
How's your spelling vocabulary? Do you remember little phrases like I before E except after C? Well, Montgomery students had to remember that and more in today's County Spelling Bee competition. Local VFW Post 96 sponsored the contest, featuring 24 Spelling Bee champions who represent area elementary and junior high schools. Before the competition began, coordinator James Gates laid down a few ground rules, saying the audience as well as the judges may challenge the way a word is spelled, that no smoking is allowed, and of course everyone should be as quiet as possible.
Sure, we all know how to spell words like photograph and terminal, but what about the harder words like mademoiselle and jambo?
The list gets even tougher with chifferobe and corruptible until the 24 have dwindled down to 2. Then the big moment comes. The number 1 man misses cosmetology, so now it's number 2's chance. He spells it correctly and is given another word.
Counterfeit. C-O-U-N-T-E-R-F-E-I-T.
With the correct spelling of counterfeit, Archer Davis, a 6th grader from Danley Elementary, wins the spelling bee and will represent Montgomery County in the state contest in Birmingham. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The proposed constitutional amendment, if adopted, would stop taxpayers from deducting their federal income tax payments on state income tax returns. It apparently means some $70 million could be diverted from education. The bill, aimed at pumping about $100 million in new revenue into the state's general fund, is carried over till next Tuesday on a Senate vote of 17 to 13. On another money matter, a House member wants to raise the state sales tax from 4 to 5 cents for 6 months, effective July 1st. Representative Lee Pegues of Marion says it would offset the possible loss of federal revenue-sharing money. The House agrees the state's Attorney General has the authority to bypass the state's Personnel Board to recruit qualified legal research aides. The bill, approved on a 61 to 17 vote, must go to the Senate and applies only to the hiring of attorney graduates from law schools. If they are employed, they must adhere to Personnel Board policy. Another measure okayed in the House and sent on to the Senate would give the National Guard the same legal authority as deputy sheriffs during periods of emergency. Under a couple of consumer measures, the House agrees that unsolicited goods received through the mail can be retained without charge by the consumer. Another bill passed prohibits unscrupulous pyramid sales in Alabama. The House returns next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Reporting from the state capitol, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
But there's also a lot of people got the same idea about the
The Montgomery County School Board listened to complaints from parents who say the busing plan doesn't work. They say when the desegregation plan went into effect, the racial mix at Harrison was 50-50. Now the school has 76% blacks and 24% whites. Some of the parents petitioned the courts to allow their white children to attend neighborhood schools rather than continue to ride buses 7 miles to Harrison. The letter from the Justice Department replies that a few students cannot change schools without upsetting all schools and requiring a reevaluation of the entire desegregation plan. And an attorney for the Board of Education says the law doesn't require racial balance, but desegregation, which isn't defined in terms of percentages. In other matters, the board today revealed the replacement for Jefferson Davis High School's head football coach. The job will go to the school's assistant coach, Charles Lee. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Federal project must be as it is not.
So I talked to the secretary down and she said that the job, possibly someone from within our staff, or it could be someone from outside. That'll be eyes. Barry has such a good program in Birmingham. I think that would be a, so I I talked to the secretary down there. She said, this is a goal I think most any coach in Alabama would like to have, is to be a coach at a top-flight school like Jeff Davis. Jeff Davis is, if not the largest, the second largest high school in the state. It has a good name, and I would certainly have to consider it, if not the top coaching job in the state, then certainly one of the top 2 or 3.
Do you foresee any immediate changes?
Coach Livens has built a tremendous program, Fred. I would only hope that Jeff Davis can maintain what it has. We always think that one of the problems that schools have, or teams have, is not only to get on top, but to remain on top. This will be the thing that we'll be most working the hardest towards, just to stay on top.
You'll inherit a football team that's in pretty good shape.
We have a lot of returning people coming back on defense. Offense, we pretty well got to start over.
Now, you were defensive coordinator. Do you think you'll switch over and take over the offense now?
A lot of it will depend on who we hire and who our staff is, but for the most part, I would think I would move to offense.
How can they dispose of this waste, and where?
I would only suggest that adequate consideration be made as to what happens if a tornado takes up part of those pellets and scatters them over a broad area of the southern part of Watauga County, the northern part of Montgomery County.
On the minds of many residents were the issues of nuclear waste disposal, the possibility of accidents in the transportation of the uranium pellets, and the amount of radiation plant workers will receive. Members of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Westinghouse listened to the citizens' concerns and answered questions. A commission representative assured residents that their worries will be addressed in the environmental impact statement. The NRC must file its statement after hearing citizen concerns before the Westinghouse plant is licensed. Corporation representatives say they doubt they'll be able to meet their proposed completion date of 1983. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Prattville.
House Bill 620, authored by Representative Bob McKee, would change the present system for selecting jurors to a one-strike system in certain trials. Currently, a defendant's lawyer can dismiss 2 jurors to every 1 juror a plaintiff eliminates. The proposed bill would limit the defendant to just 1 strike. Local law enforcement officials argued in favor of the bill. So did Mayor Emery Fulmer and District Attorney Jimmy Evans. But some local attorneys and several city councilmen were just as adamantly against the bill, saying it was unconstitutional and would discriminate against blacks and minority groups. Nearly 2.5 hours after the hearing began, the delegation voted to carry the bill over until their next meeting, which could come as early as next week. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Few people ever see beyond the guarded entrance and high fences of a prison like Julia Tutwiler Correctional Center in Wetumpka. But the story of one of our Jefferson Award winners began there. WSFA received a letter from the inmates of that facility nominating Sadie Null, head nurse of the prison infirmary, for the Jefferson Award. The letter portrayed Mrs. Null as a competent nurse whose concern for the inmates went far beyond the expectations of the prison system. For example, we learned that she had taken on additional responsibilities not related to her job, such as counseling inmates about their drug problems and assisting in the placement of work-release inmates. Sadie Null became a trusted friend to these too often forgotten women. News reporter Chris Grimshaw and I went to the prison to talk with some of the inmates who echoed this praise of Sadie Null.
She understood. She talked to us about our problems, our home life, our worries, our anxieties, everything else, our medical problems also.
How do you think she related to the inmates here in general?
Well, we related to her perfectly. because she seemed to understand. She would take her time with us at one at a time, really, and really talk to us and get to know us as individuals, just not a bunch of group of prisoners, really.
Was that important to you, and was it important to the other inmates?
It was important to me, yes, and all of us, because when you're all in a group like we are here, you feel like you need someone to take time with you by yourself. And she did that. She took time with each one of us, and she knew us by name, each one of us, you know, all of us together.
All of us always had a talk with Miss Brothers, and I feel as though she was an outstanding nurse, and she would listen to all inmates' problems and try to talk to you, make you feel good, and everything. She was very, very nice. If I had a medical problem and something was bothering me, I could go to Miss Brothers and talk to her about it, and she would listen. And then if something she could do, she would do it.
Convinced that education and training are the best forms of rehabilitation, Mrs. Knoll encouraged the inmates to put their free time to good use.
She was really interested in keeping the hospital at its best, but she also encouraged her workers to try to better themselves and use their time that they had up here. And thanks to her, I've already got my GED, and I signed up for college. And I believe it was through her encouragement that I'm furthering myself.
What was your reaction when you found out you had won the award?
I couldn't believe it. It's one of the nicest things that's ever happened to me.
What do you feel about your work here at the prison?
Well, it's been the most rewarding work I have ever done. I could never go into all the little things that I mean by that, because each day when I left, I felt like that I had definitely accomplished something.
Here is what some of our Jefferson Award judges had to say about Mrs. Knoll's selection as one of this year's winners. For such a human story to emerge from the prisons in our state is a tribute not only to Mrs. Knoll, but to the inmates as well. This from Mayor Johnny Ford of Tuskegee. And finally, this summary from Lieutenant Governor George McMillan. Mrs. Knoll's story offers hope to each of us and emphasizes the untapped, unheralded, unrecognized talent in our state. People can make a difference. Lives can be salvaged and turned around through caring.
When you're all in a group like we are here, you feel like you need someone to take time with you by yourself.
She would listen, and then if something she could do, she would do it.